First things first, Naked and Afraid, Last One Standing, Season 1, Episode 8, in my opinion, was a complete wash. And I can't exactly fathom why this episode was so bad. I mean, as I was watching the episode, I began to rapidly lose patience. Yes, good people, if you're tired hearing all my bad water puns, then you know how I must have felt watching Episode 8. But over the course of this review, I will try to articulate why I felt that this episode was one of the worst for the season thus far, and I'll also attempt to share my thoughts on the episode from an unbiased point of view. So without any further delay, let's jump right in. Episode 8 immediately picks up where Episode 7 left off. Sarah is long gone, Steven has zero remorse for what he had done in order to stick around, and Operation Let's Get Rid of Jeff has officially hit a snag. So how exactly did the showrunners follow up with one of my favorite episodes for the season of the show? Well, they release a following episode that spends the majority of the hour and 23-minute runtime showing how the two teams built a raft in order to travel to the next migration point. And we as the viewing audience get to see how this task was a successful failure to some degree. Some of the folks on the show nearly drowned and got their heads bashed in by the boulders in the river. So in my opinion, this episode was a huge waste of time, and nearly half of the rafting scenes could have been cut from the episode to make space for an elimination challenge somewhere down the line. But first I want to talk about the rafts that the two teams built. On Team Jeff haters, they decided to construct a raft entirely out of bamboo, which wasn't a bad idea, but the raft that they constructed was in the shape of a canoe, and it was relatively small in size. So when I saw them constructing it, I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way that these 4 grown men could all fit on that one little raft. And sure enough, when it came time for them to use the bamboo raft, only one person could fit on it under perfect conditions. Now I think it's worth mentioning that Matt, in his quote-unquote leg injury, prevented him from really providing any significant help in building the raft. It also prevented him from hunting, and his teammates didn't seem to mind helping Matt out. Now if these remaining survivalists are the sharks that I believe them to be, then I believe that Waz, Dan, and Steven are keeping Matt out from tapping because they believe that Matt's injury makes him somewhat weaker and easier to beat. I also think that Matt could easily be faking the injury or the severity of it, which would be smart for Matt to do. If Matt isn't as hurt as he claims to be, then it means that he was just using his teammates to do the heavy lifting while he conserved his energy. Either way, I wouldn't put it past anybody on Team Jeff haters to do whatever it takes to be the last one standing. Then there's the raft that Jeff and Gary constructed. Correction, Jeff constructed about 90% of the raft by himself while Gary looked on. The raft that Jeff constructed was the square raft with a heavier corkwood. So the raft, in theory, would hold up great against the boulders, but it remained untested against the dangerous river rapids. Now what I found interesting about this part of the episode was that while Jeff was busy building the raft, Gary wandered off on his own, scavenged for food to eat, and when he found some berries, he kept them for himself, which in my opinion proved that Gary would use anybody to get ahead in the challenge. However, that's perfectly within the rules of the show, so I really can't be mad at Gary for that. I also think it's worth mentioning that Jeff sometimes can be his own worst enemy. I've said it during several past episodes that Jeff's biggest weakness for this type of challenge is that Jeff sometimes believes that he's the smartest person in the room. Take the raft that he built for example. Everyone except Jeff questioned whether the raft would be good for the migration, but Jeff never really thought to redesign the raft. Now I know there are a lot of Jeff supporters out there, but Jeff at this point is working against impossible odds, and it would behoove him to work smarter and not harder for the duration of the challenge. Now aside from having to watch the process of each team building a raft, I thought it was pretty scumbag-ish, if that is even a word, but it was pretty scumbag-ish of Team Jeff haters to sit back and watch Jeff and Gary struggle during the migration. Now I would completely understand if this were an elimination challenge or a challenge for a survival item, but the migration was meant to be completed as one group, which meant that it would behoove everybody to come together and make sure that they made it to the migration point safely. Instead of doing it as a team, Jeff and Gary tried to look out for the safety of Team Jeff haters, while Team Jeff haters laughed and mocked Jeff and Gary whenever they struggled. And I think that this was significant because there were a few times in which Jerry and Jeff came close to hitting the boulders or drowning during the migration, and the other team sat by and watched like it was entertaining. I can only speak for myself, but I'd be damned if I would risk my life like Jeff and Gary did, all for the chance of winning $100,000. Before taxes, of course. But it is my opinion that the overall challenge has brought out the worst in all the survivalists. Now, after the raft migration was completed, the original teams divide into 2 teams of 3, but the challenge from here is all individual. We have Dan, Jeff, and Steven on one team, and Waz, Matt, and Gary on the other. And just as I thought that Operation Let's Get Rid of Jeff was officially over, we get a scene of Steven and Dan collaborating with Gary, Waz, and Matt to work together so that they can get all the food caches that are available and keep the food out of the hands of Jeff. Now, to me, this mission that the Super Alliance is on is problematic for 2 reasons. For one, it is becoming tiring to watch a group of grown men trying to starve out another grown man in a challenge of this magnitude. I mean, Jeff's biggest crime was that he gathered a bunch of survival items early on in the challenge for the purposes of trading them with other survivalists. So the response from the Super Alliance was to find all the items and keep them away from Jeff. The Super Alliance continues to claim that they're playing by the rules that Jeff established. However, none of them have ever bothered to trade what they have with Jeff. And this is significant because Jeff actually has items of value that he can trade with the other cast members, but some of them simply just want to get items for free. So at this point, in my opinion, what the Super Alliance is doing is coming off as bullying, and it shows that they're scared of how much of a threat Jeff could be as the competition goes on. And furthermore, I can't see any of the other past alumni for Naked and Afraid being willing to complete in a challenge of this magnitude if there's a good chance that a Super Alliance could be formed and target them during these challenges. I think that if there is a season 2 of the show, then the showrunners need to completely do away with all the meat caches, or put rules in place where cast members can't force somebody to tap out. But secondly, because Jeff realizes that he's being targeted by the other survivalists, he may resort to fully sabotaging everybody, which is also within the rules. And if that happens, it would initially be entertaining to watch from a fan's perspective, but the other survivalists may resort to doing the same tactics, and that could turn the show into Lord of the Flies. But with that being said, here are my predictions for the show going forward. I think that the Super Alliance won't stop until Jeff is gone. And whether Jeff gets eliminated in the next episode or one of the following episodes, I don't think he stands a chance winning against the rest of these clowns. I think that the finale will ultimately be between Matt and Dan. And I think that Matt will win it all depending on how his injury holds up. But I also think that the showrunners are looking at the flaws that were exposed during the season, and I think that they'll make necessary adjustments to ensure that power moves like the Super Alliance made are harder to pull off going forward. But this marks the end of my review. Over the past several weeks, I've been enjoying all the feedback that you all left in the comment section of my reviews, so I definitely want to know what you thought about this episode. Feel free to leave all comments below in the comment section, and I'll be sure to reply to everybody. Until next time, stay tuned and stay safe. Peace.